Well, welcome back to another episode of Red Tinted Glasses. We've had our winter break, and as football's set to return, so are we, Callum. Is it too late to say Happy New Year? I guess I've said it anyway.
Well, yeah, Happy New Year. It's definitely too late, but it's the first of the new year, first show of the new year, so I feel like it's only appropriate. Welcome back, everybody. Happy New Year.
Yeah, and Happy New Year to those of you maybe tuning in for the first time or new subscribers, as we did have a good few subscribers that on the back of our free t-shirt giveaway, which I am currently modelling. And Callum, I've got the black version. For those of you that are listening, this is totally irrelevant. But if you do follow us on Twitter at RTG_podcast, we will repost the link to the t-shirt where you can buy your own. There is currently 25% off the t-shirt, and we did get a thank you from the creator of the t-shirt. For those of you that have bought the t-shirt, maybe were unlucky in the competition, so they were very thankful for the advertisement that we gave them, and good to see the design proving popular amongst the support as well.
100%. And I think I capitalised on that 25% off actually as well when I ordered mine. So there we go. Thanks very much.
Yeah, no problem. And also for those of you that do like a giveaway, stay tuned, as we will in February have a giveaway again, raising money for Aber Necessities. Jack Grimmer kindly donating a match worn signed shirt, obviously getting himself on the score sheet in midweek. So yeah, stay tuned to our social media channels for that competition.
Who wouldn't want to? And he scored as well, so it's even better.
Yeah, absolute worldie. Fair play to him.
Mm-hmm. Top corner.
So, Callum, we are back. Crowds are coming back to football. Thank God for that. We'll get into that a little bit later. But let's start with some transfer news, because it's fair to say there's been a lot to talk about in the January transfer window. Maybe nothing in terms of coming in as yet. No doubt as soon as we finish recording this, we're doing this on Friday lunchtime. You're probably tuning in Friday evening, Saturday morning. So no doubt something's going to change very quickly after our recording. But there was a few departures. Obviously, Matty Longstaff departure confirmed, along with Austin Samuels, both returning to Wolves and Newcastle respectively. But Callum, no real surprise on that front with both of those returning to their parent clubs.
No, not really. I mean, it's certainly not with Matty Longstaff. That's no surprise. I mean, it will probably only be interesting to see what happens with him next at Newcastle, because, well, given their recent owners coming in, I can't imagine he'll be finding himself in that starting lineup anytime soon. Austin Samuels, it's maybe slightly more interesting given the fact we did have an option to buy, but given how little we've seen him recently, and I suppose maybe perhaps could have been given more of a chance, but he didn't really set the world alight. So no real surprise, no great loss, really.
No, absolutely. But it's encouraging to see, despite the social media talk that suggested otherwise, the third loanee, Teddy Jenks, will remain on loan at Aberdeen for the remainder of the season. And for those of you that maybe checked out his interview on Red TV, emphasising his desire to stay in, that's ultimately what he wanted to do for the second part of the season. Obviously, the decision may have been out with his control, with Brighton ultimately having the final say, but the deal has been agreed that he will stay with Aberdeen until the end of the season. And Callum, I think from what we saw just before the winter shutdown, I think we can be fairly happy with Teddy Jenks staying on board for the rest of the season.
Yeah, definitely, especially given the fact he actually wants to be here as well. That's obviously a massive bonus. He's not someone we've seen, too regularly, but at times, as you say, before the shutdown, he has come up with some important moments. Obviously, the goal at St Johnstone, a couple of assists too. Clearly a guy with quality who I'm sure probably eventually will go on to bigger and better things. But happy to have him here until the end of the season. And maybe we'll see him feature a little bit more, and hopefully can carry on with those important contributions.
Yeah, starting on Tuesday would be absolutely ideal. But it's also, what I did like about that interview on Red TV was that kind of forgot really that this is his first full season in professional football, given he's been playing under 23s, obviously grabbing his first professional goal away at Livingston earlier in the season. But speaking about working with Stephen Glass this season and how that's helped him develop his game, and kind of encouraging signs that maybe if we can get the right sort of player, and certainly we're way to come on to the returning loanees back to Aberdeen, maybe we can see those sort of players begin to develop.
Yeah, that'd be very, very nice. The returning loan players are very, very interesting as well, especially given the positions they play. We'll get onto that obviously, but we're stacked. We're stacked in midfield. Could maybe almost have a full starting 11 of midfielders.
We could, absolutely. But another couple of departures before we come on to the returning loanees. Jack Gurr looking set to leave the club, no real surprise there. And then the biggest shock of them all, Ronald Hernandez looks set to stay at Atlanta. Well, Atlanta, I think, have announced him as part of their roster for next season, I believe. The club, in terms of Aberdeen, not officially announcing anything, but nobody really surprised to see the departure of the Venezuelan.
No, not at all. We've heard very little on him. Even when he was here, we didn't hear much about him. No. I think only 3 starts for Ronnie Hernandez. A bizarre transfer on all counts. I thought maybe even if he wasn't going to be our player for the long term, perhaps he could have featured a little more, but not surprising. Seems like a nice chap. A happy bloke. Wish him all the best. The MLS transfers, it's honestly baffling. Sometimes I've got no idea how it works.
No, absolutely not. But I actually thought you were a way to call it a fraud transfer. But I suppose from Aberdeen's point of view, it's not worked out the way, well, maybe the fans would have hoped for. Obviously, the player never settled in Aberdeen, and wish him all the best for his future. We'll see. Hopefully, we don't have to do any more of those dodgy dealings for players coming in from Europe onbound to America. But speaking of players coming into Aberdeen, Connor Barron will be returning from his loan spell from Kelty Hearts, the player that I said was the one to watch out for in our awards. Not that I'm going to not mention it every time he does something good, just to let you know, Callum. Mm-hmm. But kind of an exciting prospect, Connor coming in, especially with the club saying that he will be involved in the first team straight away.
Yeah, I think so. I think everyone sort of has high hopes at Pittodrie for Connor Barron. I saw some of the Kelty Hearts fans replying to sort of that announcement, saying he was absolutely brilliant, he'll go on to good things, and wishing him all the best, which is, very, very, very nice. But hopefully he can sort of kick on and sort of follow in the footsteps of Calvin Ramsey, for example. But I think it is very, very exciting. I don't know, obviously, how much of a role he'll have to play this season, but the fact he's involved with the first team, I suppose, can only be a good thing. Learning off players such as Brown, Ferguson, whilst he's still here, perhaps a potential long-term replacement for him. Yeah, it can only be a good thing. Very, very positive.
Yeah, I suppose when you think back to earlier in the season, one of the earlier episodes we did when Dean Campbell had released an interview on Red TV to say how much he benefited from Scott Brown just being on the training ground and stuff he could feed off. It's a great point, Callum, that hopefully the likes of Connor and Jack Mciver, who are going to come on to, will also benefit. But Connor, 14 games for Kelty this season, 1 goal and 2 assists and just over 1,000 minutes under his belt. It doesn't seem like a lot, but as you said, the Kelty fans appear to be desperately disappointed to lose him. But I suppose from Aberdeen, maybe don't expect him to play on Tuesday night, but looking ahead to the Scottish Cup game against Edinburgh City, obviously played against them twice this season. He isn't cup tied as he never featured in the Scottish Cup for Kelty. So maybe the first chance for most of the Red Army to see him then. Is that maybe fair?
I think so. I just think it's something I'd quite like to see. Don't want to take the game against Edinburgh City too lightly. Obviously, because we've been there over the years with these kind of ties. But I think that would be a good game for him to come in and see what he's made of. I think it's obviously the statistics, maybe you can judge them on however you like. Maybe not the most impressive, but the fact he's played over 1,000 minutes, that's good experience playing against full-grown men at such a young age and playing at a pretty decent Kelty Hearts side. Obviously at a slightly lower level than us, but good experience nonetheless. And I think it would be a good chance to see what he's about against Edinburgh City. Yeah,
absolutely. And the other returning loanee is another midfielder, because we are inundated with them, of course, this one's probably gone a bit under the radar in a sense. Jack Mciver coming back from Huntly, obviously plying his trade in the Highland League. Similar to Connor, 14 games for young Jack, but 2 goals and 3 assists for Jack in those games. And hasn't had as many injuries as Connor did. I think Connor missed 3 games for Kelty due to injury. So Jack's actually racked up just over 1,200 minutes for Huntly. But he will be cup tied as he played in the game at Stenhousemuir where he did score one of those goals for Huntly. But again, another player maybe many people haven't heard a lot about, but has obviously done enough to impress the first team manager and get his opportunity.
Definitely. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I know anything about him, let alone much. But he went on loan to Huntly. Again, that can only be good experience for him, playing against sort of more experienced players, playing with more experienced players too. And it'll be an interesting one. I thought maybe he'll be one that might end up back out on loan, perhaps at a higher level, as we've seen with a few players that have returned from loan spells and gone back out. But it's exciting nonetheless. It's good to see sort of these young players, and even if he goes out on loan towards the back end of this transfer window, he'll benefit also from the experience having trained with the first team here.
Yeah, I think the only thing I do know about him is that he's the son of the guy Mez on Twitter. You know, the guy who does all the displays around the world. That's the only thing that I know about him. I haven't really seen much of him footballing wise, but that's a silly little fact for you.
Thank you.
But let's look at who we've signed, Callum. Certainly a signing that has caused a lot of discussion. Let's put it politely. Dante Polvara coming in as the highest ranked college player. Was it Georgetown he came in from? Another midfielder again. What was your initial thoughts on this signing?
I mean, great name, first of all. Great name. Very American. I'm all for it. I mean, again, I've not going to claim to... I've seen literally about 2 minutes of YouTube clips of him. 6'4", notice that. That's pretty exciting. Big fan of a big unit in midfield. I mean, it'll be interesting to see how much he does actually feature this season anyway. I don't know if he's even in the country yet, to be honest.
No, good point.
Can't be certain. But there's a little bit of excitement based off of nothing other than the fact he's an unknown quantity coming in. And it'll be interesting to see what he's made of. I think it's trying something new rather than signing sort of League One fodder from the Championship from England, which, you know, hasn't worked out too well in the past. See Stephen Gleeson and Forrester. But I think we have reason to be excited. I don't know how, as I said, how much he'll actually feature this season. Perhaps maybe another view for a long-term replacement for Ferguson. Certainly looks as though from the very small amount of gameplay I've seen of him that he does like, you know, breaking forward from midfield. I think he has 7 goals, 6 assists he had for Georgetown. Obviously, you know, not at a particularly great level, but it's college football. It's meant to be the best young footballers in America. So, I mean, there's reason to be somewhat excited there. But I'm not going to get too carried away. Good name, though. And speaking of very, very American names, just a special mention to Tristan Traeger, 2nd round pick of the Super Draft in the MLS, going from USA Air Force to Atlanta United. Will we see him come all alone at one point from them? Who knows? Stay tuned to find out.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. I thought you were going to mention him earlier when we were talking about Ronald Hernandez, but you got him in eventually.
Oh, yeah.
And an interesting point about the journeyman, you know, the second part of the show today, when I catch up with Allan McCarlie from Australia, he mentioned the exact same thing, Callum, about this sort of signing is a low risk. You know, we won't have invested loads of money, and he's probably, with the greatest of respect, he's not going to be on the highest of wages compared to some of our other players, the likes of Ferguson, Brown, Ramirez even. So in terms of the spending that we're putting into this player, there is low risk, but potential for high reward if he comes with the hype that has been talked about. The YouTube highlight reel, that's easy to pick your best clips. Anybody can do it. I remember when you just need to look at Chidi Nwakali when he signed. You know, his highlight reel was screamers from 20 yards, and he didn't exactly set the heather on fire when he came here. But, you know, previous winners of the Herman Trophy that Dante found himself winning was Andrew Gutman, who people may remember as the ex-Celtic player, won that back in 2018. And then, of course, current Dundee United midfielder Ian Harkes. He's gone on to do all right for himself. I mean, there isn't exactly a great track record of those people setting the heather on fire, as I said, but I was kind of looking through previous winners and seeing where they are now. There was one previous winner, Robbie Robinson. He's currently at Inter Miami, played 36 games for them so far this season. It might just be that we don't know about them because they're all currently still plying their trade in the MLS. And we're just a bit, blinker to that side of the world and that footballing environment. But look, he's a young guy, and it obviously fits in with the new mantra that the club are going down on, attracting young talent, developing them, and then selling on for profit. So we've just got to see how he gets on.
Certainly, I think there is a sense of sort of intrigue there. It'll be interesting. We're trying something new. I mean, when Hearts signed, for example, Cammy Devlin from Australia, they probably knew very little to nothing about him, and he's performed very, very well for them. So, not going to write him off. I'm not going to do that, but I am a little bit excited just to see how it goes. It's something new, something different. Yeah,
I don't feel that the signing justified some of the overreaction that was getting branded about on social media. But what would an Aberdeen tweet or Facebook post be without a bit of overreaction, of course?
Exactly, it's what we do. It's fine.
Yeah, we've got to moan about something if there's nothing else.
Well, true, and with the football, let's be honest, there was no football to complain about, nothing like that. So,
don't speak too soon.
Unlucky. Well, yes, we'll get on to that. Oh dear, this could be fun.
Obviously, any transfer window comes with rumours, Callum. So let's look through some of the rumours, some of the names that have been linked to the club. Let's start with the goalkeeper, Zander Clark, current St Johnstone #1, and been on the fringes of the Scotland squad as well. He's been linked with a pre-contract move to Aberdeen, along with Dundee United also vying for his signature. I've seen a bit of mixed reaction online to the potential or rumoured signing of Zander Clark, some people being a bit against the signing. Personally, I don't really get the people that are in that camp. I think he's a quality keeper. He's probably done a lot for St Johnstone this season in terms of keeping them in the games. Yes, I know the game against us, we were very critical of him not playing to the whistle, but he's obviously got hopes of being in the Scotland squad. But would you be opposed to him signing for Aberdeen?
Certainly not, especially on a pre-contract. I would be happy with that. It's someone who, I'm not saying he's going to come and immediately become our #1, but it's certainly a bit an upgrade on Gary Woods. He's going to push Joe Lewis. Perhaps he could easily take his place. It's another one that's pretty low risk, I would guess. And as you say, for him, it's probably the type sort of right move at the right time. It'll be interesting to see with Benji Segrest, whose contract's up at sort of the end of the season, rumoured going to Rangers, perhaps. Zander Clark might prefer then to go to Dundee United if that does happen, because that's basically a guaranteed starting spot.
Yeah,
but it's I'm not concerned about it. I think we're right to have a sniff around him. And if he did come in, I think I'd be fairly happy with that, whether it's to push Joe Lewis or to take his place.
Yeah, I absolutely. I kind of agree on that sentiment. And, I've seen some people about saying that, it would halt or hinder the progress of Tom Ritchie. But I think if, you're going to be chucking him into the fold next season, he's not going to be our #1 next season, but at least, Zander Clark could quite easily be, whether or not that would be the case if he was to sign a pre-contract. And I think the point you make, I think a lot will depend on what happens with Segrest at Dundee United. He might view he would rather be a guaranteed starter, and that might not necessarily be the case at Aberdeen, but one to watch for sure.
I think so. Just sorry on Tom Ritchie as well. Goalkeepers have a very, very long career span, and often you see it takes a little bit more time for them to develop as well. But it's a benefit in terms of towards the end of their career, they're sort of not in their prime until a little bit later on. So I think Tom Ritchie, maybe it probably is too soon for him, but to bring him in, get him involved with sort of Zander Clark and Joe Lewis, then perhaps benefiting from loan spells elsewhere, gaining first-team experience at maybe a lower level. Maybe that's sort of a better path to go down in terms of looking at the long term. I don't think Zander Clark's going to be, he's not going to be the long term solution for
no.
the next 10 years or whatever. But in terms of the short term, certainly could be, especially, with Joe Lewis at times, his form's gone a bit all over the shop. So I say, perhaps if he pushes him even, then not a bad signing.
Yeah, no, I absolutely. Actually, just took the words out of my mouth that I was gonna say, because the point you made about Connor Barron coming in and learning off of Scott Brown, that would be another high quality keeper for Tom Ritchie to learn off. And again, there was a kind of segment on Connor Barron, Jack McKenzie, and Tom Ritchie on Red TV, and Tom Ritchie highlighted the fact that he's training with Aberdeen most of the time. Yes, he goes and does his training with Huntley when he was there as well, but he's still in and around the first team, so getting to learn and getting exposure to a first team environment. And if you brought in another high quality goalkeeper that he could learn off as well, that's only going to help his development. As you said, they've got long careers, so it's just going to be one of those ones to watch, really. But the main area, I suppose, to watch currently for Aberdeen fans is around that midfield area. We're inundated with them, but we might see one of them depart. Ryan Hedges is rumoured to be close to signing for Blackburn, and Blackburn keen to get the deal done this window. As we've touched on, this might be false information by the time some of you are tuning into this episode, but Callum, the figure being reported was 150,000 to take Ryan to Blackburn immediately, as opposed to a pre-contract. What is your view on that? Would you just be happy to take the money and cash in, or is he too valuable to us in terms of a push to get higher up the league and get us into Europe come the summer?
It's an interesting one. I think if you look at, in terms of his consistency, perhaps that's been questioned over the time. But the value of £150,000 compared to potentially if we have him till the end of the season, and then, perhaps winning a Scottish Cup, for example, not saying it's going to happen, but having him here is probably going to increase the chance of that, and certainly in terms of gaining a European qualification spot as well. I would be hesitant in terms of taking that money now. It's not like life-changing amounts, is it? But I suppose then if that 150k is then reinvested immediately in terms of getting a replacement in, then that's perhaps what they're thinking in terms of someone who's going to be here for the long term, be as well getting them in now and having this extra 6 months. See Jamie McGrath perhaps.
Yeah, and I think it was about 400,000 we turned down in the summer from Blackburn, I believe, which was definitely derisory at the time, given the importance that Ryan had to us the season before. But you make the good point there, Jamie McGrath. It seems that Aberdeen are closing in on a pre-contract for his signature, which I think is a very big statement. Getting someone of his quality in terms of the league into our team. But again, the rumoured figure around him coming into Aberdeen this month is 350,000. But for me, it's pretty excessive to get Jamie McGrath in now. And I think, the club seem to have kind of put their foot down on, look, we're going to get these young guys in and kind of develop some talent between now and the end of the season. Then, if that was the outlook that they had and came out with that, I think a lot of fans potentially would get behind that. I
think so. I do feel getting 150,000 for Ryan Hedges and then proceeding to have to pay 350,000 for Jamie McGrath. Something doesn't quite add up there, considering it's very similar situations, basically the same situation. And I do agree in terms of sort of using that time, I guess, to develop players. Maybe that's why we're seeing, obviously perhaps Hedges going out, but then a few players coming in between sort of Barron, Paul Vara, Mciver, if he's involved as well. Then between them, perhaps that fills that slot, even maybe not in terms of quality, but the experience could do them wonders in terms of going forward. Yeah,
absolutely. And I suppose the midfield has been the area where most of our transfer speculation comes around. Lewis Ferguson seems to be quite quiet on that front. Maybe it's something that might pick up towards the back end of the window. But Dean Campbell, another player that's been linked with moves away from the club, albeit loan moves. Forest Green Rovers, top of League Two just now, and Bolton Wanderers as well, also being linked with moves for the midfielder. But given the recent appointment that Kilmarnock made during the time that we were away, Mr. McInnes finding himself back in the dugout, would a loan move to Killie be off the cards for Dean Campbell, possibly, Callum?
It wouldn't surprise me. if that sort of thing did happen. Obviously, they've just signed Ashton, which an interesting, very unsurprising, and yet I still don't expect it. Good signing for them for the championship.
A permanent signing as well.
I know.
And also, if India Taylor, I know you said this to me, but if India Taylor thought Aberdeen was bad, just wait till she gets to Ayrshire.
Well, yeah, exactly. But, a good signing for them. Very, very good, I suppose. But regardless, Dean Campbell, I would probably be quite a beneficial move in terms of going there, playing regular football at the top end of the championship. Probably would expect Kilmarnock to get promoted one way or another now, especially if they go the way they're going with the signings. But also, I think going and testing himself, even if it's the lower leagues of England, League One, League Two, I don't think that would be a particularly bad idea as well. Something to challenge him a little bit more. Something very, very different. He'd have to become a vegan, I think, if he went to Forest Green Rovers. Another challenge for him, perhaps. Don't quite know Dean Campbell's dietary requirements right now, but it would be interesting. I would probably rather he went down there rather than playing for him, because it's also how much McInnes going to use him. I know he liked using him occasionally as a substitute when he was up here, but we'll see. It's one to watch, certainly, especially with the influx of midfielders that we are interested in and currently have brought in. Yeah,
and I tend to agree. I think you would benefit more going down south, because just for exactly the same last point that you made, McInnes didn't exactly use him in abundance when he was here. So that would maybe be a concern if he was to go to Kilmarnock. Will he benefit from continuous game time? Yes or no? You look at what the loanies had when they came up here. It's not going to be any benefit of them if they're not going to actually have any game time. So look to, and especially when Bolton are obviously, I think, in and around the playoffs of League One, or maybe they were previously, but maybe a promotion push there, and similar at Forest Green, kind of being in that sort of challenge, a proper fight, a different league, different style. I think that would benefit him a lot more than just going and being with someone that you used to. Go outside your comfort box and see if you can challenge yourself a bit more. But in terms of replacements for Ryan Hedges, maybe a more cover, Aberdeen have been linked with plenty of midfielders so far this January transfer window. Ryan Broom, currently on loan at Plymouth Argyle from Pittodrie United, managed by Alex Ferguson's son Darren. 3 goals he scored on loan at the Pilgrims so far, a Welshman as well, so maybe like for like in terms of replacing Ryan Hedges.
Called Ryan, named after another inanimate object, Hedges, Broom, pretty good. That would be interesting.
Welsh.
There you go, exactly. That would be interesting. Not got good history signing players from Peterborough United, see Chris Forster. That would be an interesting one. That's 2 mentions he's had in this episode. You didn't see that come on, did you?
No.
Another player, can't say I know too much about him. Interesting, he's on loan at Plymouth as well. It'll probably be a very hard deal to negotiate, especially if we were to bring him in now, because we'd have to be cancelling the loan deal, taking over a transfer deal. But certainly interesting. Also, former Plymouth players, Johan Foley, Rory Fallon, Chris Clark. There, so
Carrie Arneson. There
you go. So we've got a history with them. I'd say probably maybe a slightly better history with them than Peterborough United, but I don't think Stephen Glass is going to base his decision off that.
No, but just look at all the throwbacks you're managing to throw in here. This is a trip down memory lane. But we're going to go to former Falkirk midfielders, because they've been linked with Aberdeen. Currently at Lincoln is 26-year-old Conor McGrandles, scoring 2 goals for the Imps this season. And Jay Fulton, former Falkirk, currently at Swansea, but found himself out of favour under the new manager. Just the 4 appearances for him this season. I don't really, again, don't know too much about them, but it's not really names that strike out and think, we'll definitely want to see them signing for the club. More just kind of backup. Is that harsh?
I don't know. Yeah, obviously I don't regularly watch these players and see the calibre. Names I've seen a lot on Football Manager, but when I've been managing Aberdeen in particular, they always seem to be about, and I consider signing them, then usually don't. But not that means anything. they don't excite me too much in terms of, they've obviously played at a higher level than Paul Vara, but with his young age and sort of more of an unknown quantity, that sort of gets me excited. Whereas, players that are mid to late 20s coming in from, English Championship, League One, League Two, doesn't really get me going. It doesn't fill me with excitement.
Yeah.
I'm fine if they come in, but I'm wanting more. I want a little bit more. Guess another South American talent, please.
Here's us moaning about a signing when we said there's nothing to even moan about, or when we were speaking about Dante, that we're neither here nor there. But it's Russell Martin that's the current Swansea manager. It was really bugging me that I couldn't get his name out when I was thinking of it earlier. But I remember Jay Fulton from his time at Falkirk. He was in around the team with Will Volks and Craig Sibbald, and when they were, kind of on their promotion push in the championship, and not before where they are just now. And he was a kind of part of that exciting midfield. But like I said, I don't know really what he's been up to at Swansea. I know he's found himself out of favour, but again, 27-year-old, he's not particularly towards the end of his career, maybe coming with a point to prove. But again, so the wages that probably these clubs can currently hold on the players, it'd be hard to kind of match in terms of a signing. But would we be looking maybe at a 6-month loan for these sort of players?
I don't know, and again, I don't know if that's beneficial for us in terms of the long term, neither. And also, they're not going to come in and change our season, are they? They're not those type of players. Jay Fulton, perhaps you maybe would have taken, well, both him and Conor McGrandles, if perhaps before they left Falkirk, then was sort of the time you would have maybe have liked to see them. But now it's not filling me with great confidence. But it's interesting that we keep being linked to centre midfielders and things when clearly I think we need another striker to help things out. And I've not seen anything on that front. No,
and I think as well, had we not already recalled Connor Barron and Jack, I would have maybe been, a bit more enthused by the possibility of signing these guys that we've mentioned. But if we're going to develop our own talent and our own, homegrown players, I'd rather just do that than, people are speaking about, hindering Tom Ritchie if you bring in Xander Clark. Well, you're potentially hindering Connor and Jack if you bring in Conor McGrandles and Jay Fulton. So it'll be, especially if they're coming in on loan, it'll be interesting to see what happens. But those are the rumours. And I suppose it would be rude not to mention Calvin Ramsey, slapped with a $4 million price tag. Not sure if that's a realistic value or if he's being slightly undervalued by the club, but obviously a host of clubs showed initial interest, and it's gone a bit quiet, let's be honest. I wasn't sure when we were going to record this episode if we were going to be speaking about him already leaving the club, but maybe something again like Lewis Ferguson that will kind of heat up towards the back end of the transfer window.
Almost certainly when we've got important games coming up, that's bound to happen. I think, apparently we're not in the position where we need to sell Calvin Ramsey, which is, always good. I'd like to see him stay. In terms of if he went down to England, you'd probably end up seeing him sort of playing for the under 23s down there. And I'm not saying players don't develop that way, but you're better off playing first team football against fully grown men and things like that. But in terms of teams I have seen him linked with, if we were going to sell him, Bologna, make that happen. Imagine him on one side, Hickey on the other. That would be great.
Yeah, it'll certainly be an interesting one. I know the Bologna fans are certainly all up in Calvin's Instagram comments trying to persuade him to come over there. But what do you make of that price tag? Would $4 million be seen as good money for the club? I know people are trying to compare the value that Calvin that's been associated with Calvin compared to what Nathan Patterson went, but people are maybe going to disagree with this, but Nathan Patterson's got a leagues winner medal. He's played in the group stages of Europe. He's also got Scotland caps under his belt, full Scotland caps, not just under 21. They're immediately going to increase his value in comparison with Calvin. Yes, I know Calvin Ramsey's played more first team minutes this season, but what Nathan Patterson had on his CV will increase his value. I don't think we'll ever get 16 million plus for Calvin Ramsey, and anyone that thinks we will is definitely delusional. But personally, I think 4 million is maybe a bit on the undervalue side of Calvin Ramsey.
I certainly think so. You're definitely right. In terms of between Calvin Ramsey and Nathan Patterson, the difference in quality is very minimal. If perhaps given the fact how much Calvin Ramsey's played, you'd maybe say he's of better quality. But as you say, the things like playing for Scotland, etc., if we do get to the World Cup, Patterson's probably going to be starting right back in that tournament. That those just automatically boost the value. And the fact it's Rangers as well, they can probably automatically demand sort of a bigger fee. But 4 million, I do think that is sort of undervalued, especially given the amount of money that goes on down there in England. The amount of times we've seen derisory bids, sort of, we mentioned Lewis Ferguson earlier, the bid Watford came in with just far too low. 4 million, we could, I think, double that. I mean, and that's still half of what Everton paid for Nathan Patterson.
And I suppose we might even see, I remember when Scott McKenna was linked with Aston Villa, I can't remember what the initial figure was, but it was rising to, was it 7 million or something like that?
Yeah.
You know, we might even see let's say it's 5 or 6 million up front, rising to 8 or 9 based on Scotland call-ups, promotion, or qualifying for Europe, depending who or where he goes. And I think the only thing that can benefit Aberdeen is a bidding war. And I think right now the club are in a fortunate position that he has a lot of potential suitors, and that can only help drive up the price. But I guess it doesn't matter the price. Obviously, the player would then have to decide where he prefers to go to as well. So certainly one to watch over the next couple of weeks. And we've got a lot of games coming up over the next couple of weeks, Calum. So not only will it be a busy time for Calvin and the rest of the first team, but it'll be a busy time for us with this Tuesday, Saturday run of games coming up. So for those of you that are maybe watching, hit that subscribe button, get that notifications on, because we will be doing a lot of live episodes as we tend to do in reacting to the midweek games, just to get the episodes out as quickly as possible to you guys. But audio will then be released in the evening, as we have been doing previously, as we did in December, normally around 5-6 o'clock on that Wednesday, day after the game. Obviously, I'm going to say hangover permitting after the Ross County game, but we will get there in the end. So, Calum, the football is back. Crowds, full crowds are back as well. The right decision?
I think so, yeah. Certainly just very excited for that to be the case. If they brought these games back and there was limited crowds, I think it just would have been just frustrating in terms of just actually not being able to go there and enjoy them. And it certainly makes for a better spectacle in terms of this game against Rangers. If it's, in front of 15,000 or whatever it ends up being, it just makes for a more enjoyable experience when you're there or whatever. And also probably gives us more of a chance of actually getting a result. So very happy.
Yeah, a lot more hatred from the stands, a lot more atmosphere, and just these games especially need a big crowd. But it's the start of 8 games in 25 days, and they said it's going to be a good crowd. I was at the Brecon for Martin game the other week, and that was supposed to be played in front of 500. Definitely a few more than that, but even then, just these sort of games, they need crowds just to get any sort of thing going. And I think we're really going to benefit from that full crowd in what will be the first game that we've played back since the Boxing Day win over Dundee. And Calum, we kind of struggled after a bit of a long layoff, 11 days when we travelled to Easter Road. Will that layoff maybe affect us slightly on Tuesday night against Rangers?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I was like, it'll be great because they'll be buzzing to play in front of a full crowd again after a layoff. Having enjoyed the festive period, unlike me, who had to isolate after getting that game against Hibs, so that was fun. But I did think then also I thought that about the Hibs game, the bit of the layoff there, which is a bit of a problem. But I'd like to think that a big crowd at home against Rangers, they know what's at stake, a chance to sort of lay down a marker perhaps, and hopefully they will be ready and raring to go. Particularly if they're playing for a move elsewhere. Hopefully, regardless of that, they can put in a fantastic performance. It'll be an interesting one for sure.
Yeah, and certainly during that layoff, many of us were invested in the Ramirez family holiday down to London. That was a great way to pass the time. Well, certainly more so for you, I'm sure. And hopefully he can hit the ground running on the return. But if there is any, lack of match sharpness or players, physically struggling, there is the return of 5 subs to the Premiership starting on Tuesday. What are your thoughts on that return of 5 subs?
I think it's probably beneficial. Certainly for us, we've got, plenty of players that can come off the bench for the most part. And also in terms of we're going to see, the COVID cases as they continue to rise, I think. I don't know. But we will probably see these problems in future. I mean, I highly doubt we're going to make it through the rest of the season without players missing out and things. It just gives a bit more leeway in terms of that, and getting other players involved when there's going to be congested fixture schedules. I think it is probably beneficial and a wise move by the Scottish football governing bodies, but it's not like them, so I've got to give them credit.
Yeah, which is interesting given Alan Burrow's thoughts on the move, saying it's kind of unfair to reintroduce that. It's only going to benefit the bigger teams, which maybe we saw last season in the closed door games. But I think you make a good point there about the COVID cases, something I hadn't really considered if teams have got suffering with that. And also given the fact that after that long layoff, they're going straight into 8 games in 25 days, managers are probably going to be delighted to have that opportunity. I was listening to a show last night, and the only thing that they said is the possible downside of it may make certain games feel like a pre-season game because of the continuous stoppages. I assume it will be like last time where you have the 3 opportunities to 3 stoppages to make that change. Obviously, could potentially be 6 different stoppages for substitutions alone. So it'll be interesting to see how that affects the flow of games.
Well, that's the case anyway, I suppose, if both teams make 3 individual substitutions. So I suppose it adds up. I think that is very smart to have that as the three stoppages.
If the manager remembers.
Yes, that's very true. Hopefully Stephen Glass will do so. But also, it means we're probably quite likely to see the return of Super Stephen Glass's halftime changes, because he's got more options later on in the game as well. So can't wait for that. Buzzing. Yeah,
a very good point there. Looking to the game itself from an Aberdeen point of view, Calum, no suspensions to take into this game. I was going to say no real injury concerns, but there is a concern around Marley Watkins, obviously pictured being on crutches with his ankle in one of them like space boots. No word officially from the club around his injury. I know seen a few things online about him being out potentially for the season. Given the way him and Christian Ramirez were linking up prior to the winter shutdown, that's going to be a big blow, and probably, to go back to a point you made earlier, might emphasise the need for a striker this window.
Certainly, and even more of concern when you consider the fact that Ryan Hedges might not feature as well.
I didn't even think that.
There you go. Okay, me go. Even if he's still an Aberdeen player, with all this speculation, if he is in talks with Blackburn, then he might not feature. They might not want him to be injured, and his head might not be in the right place as well. So it is a big concern. Hopefully, as we say, it's not out for the season for Marley Watkins. I think almost probably certain to miss the return of football. But it does emphasise that fact that we do need another forward option. I think another striker and another sort of support role player, as sort of Hedges and Watkins have been doing, because there's a lot of expectation put on Christian Ramirez, basically. And as at times, it's highly unlikely he's going to score every single week. We need other options. We need someone who can chip in with sort of, even if it's 5 goals between now and the end of the season, just someone who can add a bit of contribution in terms of that. Because we have at times struggled to take these sort of chances, and just maybe someone that offers something a little bit different. We perhaps thought that Austin Samuels might be that more mobile player. Obviously didn't work out, but just someone who offers a little bit different, another option would be nice.
Yeah, I hadn't actually considered Ryan Hedges not playing for the reasons you suggested, and just thinking to how the team might line up. Will we see J. Emmanuel Thomas come into the starting 11, or will we see Teddy Jenks kind of pushed a bit further forward, kind of like what we did against St Mirren, where he played in a more advanced role and looked very good, actually, I thought, in that game. And I did say earlier in the episode we might not see Connor Barron play on Tuesday night, but actually, given what you've just stated, and having forgotten about Marlon Watkins' injury until 2 minutes ago, we might in fact see him, because he has been playing more recently and will have that much sharpness in his leg. But you never know, Stephen Glass and his Soccer Reds might have something lined up their sleeve as a wee surprise for us all.
Absolutely any team could come out an hour before kickoff. Who knows what it's going to be? But it's a good point about Conor Barron. Will we see a Craig Story versus Celtic esque performance there? Who knows? But I think I would like to see probably Teddy Jenks come in maybe over J. Manuel Thomas, because I would like, for example, when Rangers are on the ball at the back, someone who's a bit more mobile, more likely to go and aggressively press them with Christian Ramirez. Perhaps, Teddy Jenks is maybe the answer. And also he does have that sort of creative spark that we can see. And also if he's in there, then we might see, Ferguson being more likely to push on as well if Hedges and Watkins both miss out, which then might create room, as you say, for someone like Connor Barron or someone to come in who might be more likely to sit with Scott Brown or Dylan McGeoch. Is he fit? Can't quite remember.
Well, according to Transfer Market, he's not going to be fit for the game, but we never know. We might get rushed back for it to help sit in that midfield, because he did put in a good performance at Ibrox. But Craig Story, fucking hell, what a shit career he ended up having. Remember, before the game got cancelled, he was looking for a ticket in the away end. That's how bad his career's gotten into.
I really hope I get to see him at the fence. That would be fantastic if I see him at the fence. I would love that so much. You use the term career there very loosely. I don't even know if he's still playing football to any level.
If nowadays. He is, he's probably even like juniors or like Sunday league at best.
Which is mental, considering he strolled that game against Celtic. It's so crazy to think he went from that and apparently turning down Man United to where he is now. Hopefully at the fence so I can abuse him. That'd be good. Yeah.
Well, you enjoy that on Tuesday if you see him. But Speaking of Rangers, they themselves are coming up north with a few injury concerns. Philip Hollander and Liam Balogun currently out injured, as is Ryan Jack. Who's disappointed about that? Nobody. And Joe Aribo, probably the bright spark for Rangers in recent weeks under Giovanni Van Bronckhorst, is currently missing due to being at the African Cup of Nations. Probably a benefit for us given the form that Aribo found himself in before Christmas.
Yes, definitely. I think that is a big miss for them. As you mentioned, probably the biggest loss. Hopefully, however, looking at that, they might have somewhat of a makeshift back four. Obviously, they still have capable players, but they're without Nathan Patterson, who could potentially come in as well. Another player. But, however, I've got to mention him, unfortunately, despite Jack not playing. Yeah, I know. And he scored against St Mirren as well in the last game on Boxing Day. Will we see Scott Wright, Serpent Wright, starting? I'm ashamed to share a name with him, but he could potentially start at Pittodrie, which would be a very, very interesting one. That would certainly liven things up even further.
I'd like to see him try and take a corner at the Red Shed on Tuesday night if he is starting, let alone actually not even a warm-up. How much Andy Halliday shot himself when he had to do his warm-up in front of the Red Shed. That'll be an interesting one for him come Tuesday night. Not that we're condoning anything, just a mere observation.
No, exactly.
That is all.
And also on the mention of Andy Halliday, sorry, can he shut his mouth about Calvin Ramsey, please? What's that about? You're playing for Hearts. What's going on?
What is it with former Rangers players? And actually, it's a point you made, Calvin Ramsey. I wonder what he'll get linked with coming up to a big game. We play Rangers on Tuesday. And of course, a former Rangers player has to bump his gums about him potentially joining Rangers or them getting involved in that. But he's currently playing for Hearts. What does it matter for him who Calvin Ramsey joins? So yes, I'm sure there'll be a lot of paper talk around most of our key assets coming up to this game on Tuesday, but definitely one that looking forward to with the return of crowds. And as I said, we'll be back on Wednesday lunchtime with the review of the game. Hopefully something decent to talk about, Callum, or it could be a painful episode. And then, of course, looking ahead to the Scottish Cup tie against Edinburgh City next weekend as well. But in part 2 of today's episode, I catch up with friend Allan McCarlie about life in Sydney, growing up as an Aberdeen supporter, and whether or not, as Aberdeen currently explore America for young talent, is there anything in Australia that Aberdeen can keep an eye on? Well, Allan, welcome to Red Tinted Glasses. I would say it's good morning, but it's good evening for you. Hope you're doing well over in Australia.
Yeah, good evening from Australia, and good morning to you back in sunny Scotland. Glenn.
It is sunny, actually.
It is.
Yeah, I know it's a rarity, but no, a pleasure to get you on, Allan. Obviously, I first met with you about 4 years ago when you made your trip home with your son for the Scottish Cup final in 2017, which we'll come on to. But what I wanted to do with you today was kind of get a feel for what life's been like for you living abroad and following the Dons, but also kind of hear about the Australian football scene, because there's been a lot of talk recently about Aberdeen being involved with America. Obviously, we've seen the recent signing of Dante Polvara, but is there maybe talent that we can exploit over in Australia? Obviously, we're seeing Hearts recently making a couple of signings from the A-League. So just get a discussion on your life down under, but also the Australian football scene, because I know you're involved in that, being a season ticket holder at Western Sydney Wanderers, but also you do some football coaching as well.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, definitely there's a market over here, and I'd love to sort of talk about it a little bit later.
Yeah, so we'll start at the beginning and kind of want to hear about how you fell in love with the Dons, because you didn't actually grow up in Aberdeen.
No, I'm not an Aberdonian. I actually grew up sort of halfway between Glasgow and Edinburgh in Lanarkshire, very close to Hart Hill, which everyone knows really for the service station. And I grew up on a farm there. And actually my brother and most of my cousins were staunch sort of Rangers fans, but, and I never wanted to go that way. And I wasn't allowed to go to the Celtic side given the West of Scotland thing. So I plumped for Aberdeen, and I think I've got a scarf going back to 1980 when we won the league, and I would only have been about 5 or 6 at the time. So it's sort of been in me for a very long time, and it's probably in me now more than ever.
Yeah, and so what's kind of your first memory then of supporting Aberdeen? You said you're quite a young age. What's your earliest memory?
Look, probably 83 winning the European Cup Winners' Cup. I can still picture myself. I know exactly where I was sitting on the couch. I know where the TV was. Back then we used to move the TV around in the living room. My mum thought it was like going on holiday or something. I don't know, but I still remember what side of the couch was on, where the TV was, and it's very vivid, that 83 final. But look, I remember going to a few games, local, maybe Motherwell or Airdrie games with some friends, maybe from school. But it probably wasn't until I hit sort of 16 where I was able to go up to Pittodrie, and actually I joined the supporters club. I was a member at Linlithgow for a couple of years, and I was a member at Capital 1903. So that's probably around sort of 88, 89, 90, through those sort of years when I really started attending Pittodrie on a regular basis.
Yeah, and what was it like, those supporters trips up the road then?
Look, I busted my mum and dad, for years, and I was told, wait till you're 16 before you can join the supporters club. And just, it was amazing. My mum would have to drive sort of 40 minutes to Linlithgow and drop me off at the Asda, and you'd get on the bus and then off you went up to Pittodrie, and it was just this mad adventure that we all know now and we all love, but for a sort of 15, 16-year-old, it was amazing just to go up there, some cracking away days through in Edinburgh, through in Glasgow. But most fondness was the trips up to Pittodrie.
Yeah, I suppose kind of a pilgrimage, and almost every day was an away day for you then, well, every weekend.
It was, you know, down that area, it was a sort of 2.5, 3 hour trip, you know, and then when I got back home, I used to have to sort of, you know, I think I used to ring from the phone box at the Forth Road Bridge or something like that. And then my mum or dad would have to leave home and then come and pick me up. And by that time, it must have been like 8 or 9 o'clock at night from Linlithgow.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's what we do for our team, isn't it? And I've got massive memories of that time.
Yeah, and good also to still see the Capital 1903 Supporters Club still going strong, even now. Yeah, I stumbled across it, I think, on Instagram or something just not that long ago. And, you know, I like the posts and follow them and stuff, but it's a long time ago from me. But, you know, I think I was with them when we went through, you know, I remember when we lost to Rangers the last day of the season where we nearly won the league. I was sort of with them then. And then also, you know, happier times when they won the League Cup in 89 and then the Scottish Cup in 90. They were two amazing games. I mean, I remember, you know, just being behind the goal with that penalty shootout, you know, for the most boring Scottish Cup final in history. You know, I think they just introduced penalties not that long before it. Oh, we'll go to penalties, not a replay. And of course it goes to penalties and it was a drab 0-0. But I remember being behind that goal and just, you know, the tension. I don't think I've ever felt anything, you know, like that. I remember, and I'm sure, you know, I don't know if you were there or if you were alive. I wasn't even born by then.
I wasn't born, Jesus. But, you know, I still remember, you know, Theo Stellenders and pumping up the crowd because, you know, the Celtic fans were booing, what's the boy's name? The young boy, Graham, I think. Graham, he'd replaced, I think, Ian Jess because Ian Jess was injured or something. And then the same as everyone else, Charlie Nicholas stepping up and everyone thinking he's just going to sky this. And he nearly did. He put it in the top corner. Some might say it's a great finish. Others would say that it was a miss on his behalf. But it was brilliant.
Yeah, so who'd have been, obviously, some good memories in there, you know, the 83 as a child, and then, you know, getting to be there in the 90 Scottish Cup as you've just recalled there. So who'd have been your kind of favourite players growing up during that period of time?
Look, in the beginning, I loved Peter Weir. Peter Weir was just, you know, the guy. I think he was the first. I was going to say the name I had on the back of the jersey, but you never got the name. You just got the number. So I had the number 11 on the back of, I remember, an old white away kit. I'm sure the number would be like that sort of velvet number. And Peter Weir was just a guy who could drop his shoulder and go past a player almost in slow motion because he wasn't quick. So he was a real entertainer. And he used to just put it on people's head in the box for fun. So he was probably the first one, along with Jim Leighton. I loved Jim Leighton through those years, and then sort of a little bit later, I really got into the sort of Dutch influence, and I thought Hans Heelhuis was the greatest, and I still think he's in the top sort of few strikers that we've ever had at the club. You know, the fact that we could sign a guy who, I think he went to the Euros or the World Cup as the sort of backup striker for Holland to Van Basten, you know, it's just like amazing that he was at Aberdeen. So him and probably Theo Stellenders. I used to love him as well until he probably went to Rangers. But anyway.
Yeah, I think you guys were pretty much spoiled for choice in terms of quality and players to enjoy during that period. And certainly, you know, people of my generation and younger probably look back with a tinge of jealousy that some of the quality that you got to enjoy as well as the success. And I suppose for you as a youngster, being able to grow up with that success, did you maybe take it a bit for granted when you look now at the kind of barren spell that we've gone on?
Absolutely. Like, it was just, you know, obviously winning things for fun back in the 80s, and then even at the end of the 80s, beginning of the 90s, getting to a cup final was just, you know, that was just something that happened every year. Attracting those quality players, probably spending a little bit of money on players as well was something that we did. definitely looking back now, it's something that we took for granted. I took for granted at the time. And that's probably, which we can talk about later, like why my son and I, made the pilgrimage, if you like, to come for the 2017 Cup final, because I sort of realised over the last 20 and 30 years that the Cup finals don't come around very often.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously you had to make that pilgrimage from Australia because you moved there in 1998. You did a bit of travelling. What led to Australia being your final destination?
You know what? I had a bit of a sense of adventure from a young age. I grew up on a farm, and I always thought there's got to be more to life than this. I mean, looking back, I'd probably love to live in a farm now and get away from, things. But at the time, I thought, I wanted, you live once and travel the world type thing. And to be honest, I was in a bit of a bad car accident, I think around sort of 96, 97, and was pretty lucky to get out of it. And I sort of said from that day that I'm going to go travel and just sort of have a bit of an adventure. And 98, I came to Australia, and I always imagined that I would go back to Scotland, but probably I was here for probably 3 or 4 years, and then I realised that I was probably going to stay here, that, and I did meet my wife, and who is Australian, so that sort of helped. But yeah, so since 98, I've been here. Do I miss a lot of stuff in Scotland? Family, of course I do. Do I miss Aberdeen? Of course I do. But now I've got a couple of kids. The quality of life that they have here is exceptional, and I wouldn't change that.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a good lifestyle you can get over in Australia. And for those that are tuning into this episode and follow you on Twitter anyway, will probably be quite jealous of that pool you've got at home, especially on a nice hot day. It looks like something I would be dive bombing into at the end of a day.
100%. Now, we put in the pool just last year or the year before, and I must admit, one of my very good mates is Irish, and he maintains that, when you're swimming in your own pool in your own backyard in Australia, you just got a little bit of a sense that you've sort of made it in life or something like that. So, yeah, it's good fun.
Yeah, it certainly looks it. But moving to Australia didn't stop you continuing your support for Aberdeen. How much has sort of podcasts and certainly Red TV especially managed to help you keep up your support of Aberdeen? Because Scottish football probably, does that have as much airtime compared to English football over in Australia?
No, it doesn't. And look, when I first came in 98, and probably for the first 5 or 6 years, social media and that sort of stuff hadn't really hit, which makes me sound really old. So the best I sort of got, actually, you used to get an international newspaper, and you could sort of duck into the newsagent and steal a bit of a look at that and have a bit of a read. But I've got to thank my sister for what she used to do for the first few years I was here. She used to send me a VHS every month. And it would have like 4 weeks worth of like sports scene highlights or an Aberdeen game if Aberdeen was on the TV, and it would have a whole heap of clippings of the newspaper articles from the Aberdeen games. So she used to send that over, and I used to love receiving that, and it was a real sort of sit there reading the articles and see how many points out of 10 that someone got or whatever it was, and then watch that. That's what you got. We take for granted now that I can wake up in the morning and either go on Red TV, or you can go on any sort of social media and you can see all the goals from sort of all the leagues in the world, at a drop of a hat. It wasn't like that back in the late 90s and the early 2000s.
Yeah, I like how you said that no social media at that time will make you sound old. There'll be people thinking, what the hell's a VHS? Although I am old enough to remember that, so don't worry. But have your kids kind of got the Aberdeen bug? Obviously, you took your son over in 2017, but do they appreciate it as much as you? I mean, you guys are all season ticket holders as Western Sydney Wanderers, as I touched on, but do they kind of appreciate the Aberdeen connection?
Look, they do. They most definitely do because of me, but also because we've been back on a number of occasions. My wife is Australian, but her parents are Croatian. So they're a bit of a football or a soccer mad family, and my wife used to play football as well. So that side of the family is as mad for football as I am. So I think they sort of see the value in what football gives us. And then they obviously see their dad getting up at all hours of the morning to watch Aberdeen Motherwell on Red TV. And they must, to begin with, they probably think I'm crazy, but then they probably do deep down realise that it does mean something to me. Red TV's been brilliant, actually, talking about what you were saying earlier, like no social media and stuff back then. But in more recent years, I've always subscribed to Red TV. And every game I watch in full. Sometimes I feel like honoured because we get to watch as Red TV International. I get to watch every game in full, home and away. Yeah. And, you guys don't get that luxury.
No.
So, but I usually up in the middle of the night or early in the morning. If I've got to go to work, sometimes I don't get up at 2 o'clock and watch the game, but I'll get up at 6 o'clock and I'll watch it before I head off to work. So Red TV's made a big difference. And, rather than just reading the report or seeing the results, you can sort of make up your own mind for sort of what you're, how they're playing and what you're seeing yourself.
Yeah.
But, the kids, they support Aberdeen. That's their Scottish team.
Yeah.
But, my son got a jersey back, when we were over in 17, but he hasn't asked for another one since, sadly. So.
And maybe if you get another trip over, which we'll come on to, he can update his collection. But I suppose you'll be probably the only person supporting Aberdeen that actually enjoys an early kickoff, because it's a more sociable time. Well, even though it's probably about still 1 o'clock in the morning for you, but it's probably a better time than 4 o'clock in the morning. And you're not the only person that tunes into this. In Australia, we've got folk that listen in Perth as well, and I think a few folk on the East Coast as well. But it really is kind of middle of the morning for you guys over in Australia when Aberdeen play.
No, it is not. We love the 12 o'clock lunchtime kickoffs, but it's got to be before the clocks change or after the clocks change. I can never remember, because that means it's like a 9 p.m. Saturday night kickoff.
Oh.
So that's just that's a dream. So they're the best, but I realise, for you guys over there, they're not the greatest, and most fans sort of hate them. But for us, it's pretty good. But at the moment, we'll be back soon. What's the Rangers game next week? I think it's a
7:45 kickoff in the evening.
So that'll be 6:45 in the morning. So that's pretty good.
That's not too bad.
That means, get up 6:30, make a cup of tea, and go for it. Yeah. And then think of an excuse to let my boss know why I won't be in the morning. So.
Yeah, well, I suppose it's a good. Well, I'd say it could be a good way to start the day, but you never know. But kind of ties in nicely, because I want to speak about your trip home in 2017. We touched on it earlier, the pilgrimage, as we want to call it, when you decided to come home for the 2017 Scottish Cup final. But you also took in a couple of games prior to that, a trip to Ibrox and a trip to Firhill for the Partick Thistle game. I can't remember if it was myself or you and Duthie that helped you out with tickets for that game at Ibrox, but I remember meeting you and your son at the Rock pre-match and going to the game, and you were in the front row. The away end at Ibrox had the Australian flag out, and that must have been some night, because that was the night that Aberdeen finally ended that long-awaited hoodoo of getting a win at Ibrox, goals from Graham Shinney and Ryan Christie. What was that like, firstly, for you? Going back and taking in a game, but what must have that been like for your son as well, experiencing Scottish football for the first time?
Look, it was, for me, firstly, it was, amazing. We actually arrived, I think it was a Wednesday night game, and we arrived on the Wednesday morning, so we were sort of a bit jet lagged. But off we went to Ibrox for the Wednesday night. But sort of leading up to that, I'd sort of realised that the Scottish Cup final doesn't come around very often, and I managed to persuade the wife that Jamie and I could come for the final, and the dollar was pretty favourable at that point. The flights weren't too bad, so we came across, and I put a couple of posts on social media because I think I was trying to buy tickets, I think, from the club, and they're saying, "Oh, you're not in that category yet. You're going to have to wait." You're obviously panicking that you're spending all this money on flights, but it was actually through yourself that got us tickets for Ibrox, because I put it out there for tickets for Ibrox, and I remember meeting you at the pub. And my son's just toddling along. He's 15 now, so what would he have been back then? So he would have been like 11. And got into Ibrox and taking pictures with the Aussie flag before many people arrived. And then because we'd sort of spoken to you and a few of the other boys, then people just started to come up to us and sort of recognised us from social media. And it was sort of, "How you going, wee man? How you going, wee man?" And my son's like, "Wee man, but Dad, you tell me I'm big for my age. What are you talking about?" No, it was just, "All right, wee man." And that was the whole thing for the whole trip. But for me, just a lot of the time when we go to Parkhead and Ibrox, it doesn't end well, But when it ends well, when you're in that little corner in those stadiums surrounded by 50,000 of the opposition fans, they are the best victories. When you're in that small minority and that corner singing and dancing and celebrating after all the Rangers fans leave, that's the best bit, when we get locked in and singing the songs. And I've still got it on my phone. I don't know, you've probably seen it, because I think someone from the other end of the stadium videoed singing 10 Men Went to Mo, and I've still got it, and it's still brilliant. I still bring it out and show people when I've had too many beers and sort of talk about that trip and say, we were there, So just magic, because I don't remember going to Ibrox and winning too many times.
No, and what was that like for Jamie then, as an experience of Scottish football for the first time? Is it something he still talks about as well?
Yeah, he just, I think at the time he sort of takes it for granted that his team wins, because Western Sydney Wanderers were going pretty well back then, and he's a Manchester United fan, and they tend to win a fair bit. So it was sort of for granted, we'll win. But, looking back, he does talk about this sort of atmosphere, and he remembers that I think we were sort of seated in the middle. And then I went, this is going to be too crazy. So we went down the front. But as Shinnie scored, obviously everyone piled down the aisle to the front, and we were right at the front. And I've suddenly had to pick him up and sort of hold him as everyone's piling across the little brick wall or through the gate onto the ash. And he got pretty scared. And he sort of freaked out a little bit at that. We sort of moved over to the other side, and then I think the next goal went in. It's all a bit crazy, but and he was maybe a bit scared at one point, but I'm sure he was 11 and he was old enough, and he still remembers it. And that trip for him was amazing. We obviously we did the 2 out of 3, but we couldn't quite get the trifecta, unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately not. But on that trip as well, you did manage to meet a few of the players outside Pittodrie at the time. Is that right? Was that on that trip?
Yeah. We actually so we went to Ibrox and we won, and then actually at the Partick Thistle game where I think I saw you as well, and you gave me my tickets to the final, which Ewan managed to source for me. Actually at the Partick Thistle game, I think it was at half time or something, Niall McGinn and Graham Shinnie, because they were on the bench because it was the last game of the season, they were being sort of safe, so they were down the front, and I took my son down and he got his jersey signed, which is quite unusual in Scotland. I know the players tend not to sort of do that. But he got his jersey signed and stuff. And Shinnie was talking to us. And actually at the final whistle of that game, Shinnie didn't actually come on. But as soon as the final whistle went, he took his tracksuit top off and took his jersey off, and he wandered over and he waved my son down, and I gave his jersey to my son, and I quickly ran over and managed to borrow a pen, and he actually wrote "Best wishes, Graham Sheeny" on his jersey, and he gave it to my son. So that was brilliant, and that's still, we've still got that framed at home. But Johnny Hayes, so he hit us up on social media and said something, and must have seen one of the tweets that went out. And he said to me, look, if you're up at Pittodrie, and it was a couple of days before the cup final, he goes, I'll let you know when we're coming out to go to training. And we actually, there was no game, but we drove up to Pittodrie to go to the club shop and spend, a small fortune as you do. But he basically was tweeting me that morning saying it'll probably be about 10 o'clock. Actually, it's probably looking about 10:30. And I was like at Dundee at the time, so I had to put my foot down to get to Pittodrie. And we're just standing out the front. And, within sort of 10 minutes, Johnny came out, said hello, took a picture, signed some autographs, and before you knew it, all the boys came out, and Derek came out, and had a chat to Jamie and myself for a few minutes, and that was brilliant. And Jamie is like, yeah, cool, but I was like, close to tears, just the fact that you could get this close to the players, and they'd sort of arranged that. So that was, that was just amazing.
Yeah, and it was this kind of sense of what the club can do, the good that not everyone maybe hears about from the club. Little small touches that might not seem significant, but to someone like yourself mean the absolute world.
Yeah, it's massive. Like what Johnny did. And Johnny was my son's favourite player. And actually that day he got the Hayes jersey and wore it to the cup final. And then of course in that off season, he left to go to Celtic. And then I think Johnny said that he would refund anyone that bought the new jersey. So I contacted Aberdeen, and you know what they did? And they said, don't worry about sending, probably I shouldn't say this, but don't worry about sending the old jersey back. We'll just send you another one. And they actually paid for the packaging. They sent me a brand new jersey. I think he got Shinny on it that time. Then he left. But he sent that, Aberdeen sent that over. So that's the stuff that the club do, and players do. And, as much as Johnny Hayes is a big name, but, he still sort of reaches out and does that sort of stuff, which is brilliant.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I suppose we should, as much as we probably don't want to, we should touch on that cup final. We won't go into it too much, but what did it mean for you, being back and going to that final with your son? As you said, we hadn't been at a Scottish Cup final for a good while. How special was that for you?
Look, because I remember the 90 Cup final so vividly when we won on penalties, and I think that was the next time we were in the final, isn't it? We hadn't been in the final since.
There was the one in 2000, the Scottish Cup final then.
Yeah. Okay, no, I wasn't back for that, but from 90, just going down to Hampden and sort of soaking up the atmosphere out the front of Hampden on Cup final day is just, there's nothing quite like it. I think English football obviously gets a lot in Australia, but at the moment, because it's been the FA Cup rounds, there is a lot of traditional people in England that talk about the FA Cup, and there was a period there that wasn't as valued, but I think that's coming back, and I'm really happy to see that for the FA Cup. But for the Scottish Cup, it is really, it's amazing. And to go to Hampden with my son, and actually we were hanging out the front of the stadium taking pictures, and who did we bump into but Theo Stelters was there. So I got a quick picture with him and an autograph with him as well. And that was amazing to be there with my son. We had great seats. I'm going to admit it, the emotion got the better of me when the teams walked out and we had that magnificent display, which I've actually got framed on my wall here. the tears were streaming down my face, as we're sort of singing and the players are walking out. He couldn't see anything because he was trying to see past all those red foil flags. Most of us couldn't see much. But that was just electric, and to go so close was so heartbreaking. And of course, to lose it to a bloody Aussie was very ironic, and a lot of people back here, reminded me of that, because I've got a lot of mates who are Celtic fans. A lot of Aussies are Celtic fans because of the sort of Viduka connection back in the day. So they remind me of that day. You went all the way back, and an Aussie undid you. So
yeah, I'm sure that made it all the more painful. But you did also, I just want to quickly touch on the trip you did in 2019, because we've just touched on, you've touched on there about how Johnny Hayes reached out to you with that personal touch. But Eileen Shinnie, many fans might know her as part of the supporters engagement team. I don't think that was formed at the time when you came back in 19, but she reached out to you on your last trip home, and you actually managed to get a tour of Pittodrie as well. So just another kind of kind gesture that the club managed to sort out for you and your family, because it was a family trip home this time. It wasn't just you and your son.
Yeah, no, it was. Look, sometimes I feel more fortunate than than some of the Aberdeen fans probably back there. But yeah, 2019, I was as a DNA member. I think the DNA members were given a bit of a tour, or you could go into the tunnel and see your name in the tunnel. But obviously I couldn't make the date that I was given, to go. But I think I emailed and said, look, I'm coming back on these dates. I'm going to attend the Hearts game. And I think maybe the Hearts game was the only game at Pittodrie in 19. And I said, is there any chance I can duck in and see my name in the tunnel? And before you know it, I was contacted, and they arranged for me to get a tour with Dave and Andrew Shiny. We had a tour of the stadium, and through the dressing rooms and stuff, and it was brilliant. It was funny, actually. It was just my son and I, but we already had bought tickets in the South Stand. And my daughter, who was, she maybe 10 or 11 back then, she obviously really wanted for me to sit next to her at that game. But Andrew and Dave had actually arranged for my son and I to sit next to them on Red TV, not to do any sort of commentary, but to sit up next to them, or you'll sit next to us. And I was like, can my wife and daughter come? They're like, nah, there's not enough space, unfortunately, So I actually knocked them back to go and sit with my daughter and my wife in the South Stand. But look, they were brilliant, and actually through Allen and the Dave, they actually after I was back in Australia, they sent me a signed program, or they sent my son a signed program from that game. So just another thing the club did. They recognised myself making the trip back, and then I think they see the value in what then I'll carry forward. And what I'm talking to you about it today, but I talk to people in Australia about some of this stuff, all the time, and spread that word for Aberdeen. I mean, all my mates down here, they follow English football, or they follow, Spanish football. They don't really follow Scottish, or they didn't until they met me. But I'm telling you now, when they open their phone in the morning, they look at, live score or FootMob or something, they look for the Aberdeen score. And they follow Aberdeen, and they often will message me, before I know the score, to say, oh, good win, or I see you're unlucky, and
spoiler alert if you haven't watched the game.
If I haven't watched the game, my phone is not even on vibrate. It's on complete silent. I don't even look at it. You've got to love those spoiler alerts.
And I suppose, the reason that I got you on the podcast was to speak about the A-League and Australian football. Is we've seen recently the kind of Australian influence kind of growing back into Scottish football with Hearts, as we touched on at the start, making a couple of signings from the A-League. But Alan, just how much has the A-League grown and changed, since you moved over to Australia?
Look, when I moved in 98, football was probably the number 5 sport. And look, to be honest, it's far from the number 1 now, but back then it's quite sort of community based. It was quite sort of ethnic based. The old sort of National Soccer League was full of teams that, there was an Italian team from Sydney and an Italian team from Melbourne, and there was a Croatian team and a Maltese team and a Macedonian team. And, I tried to follow it, and I did go to some games, but, all the fans were sort of chanting in their sort of own language, and you didn't really get that connection.
Yeah.
And it felt sort of quite, look, obviously the way Football Australia or the Federation Football Australia, what they felt was that it was never going to grow into, the number 1 sport or close to the number 1 sport if it stayed the way it was. So they decided, I think it's in 2004, they introduced the A-League that we know now. And they sort of took a lot of those teams away. They went back to the sort of state level football, and they introduced the A-League. So there was sort of like, we're going to put 1 team in Sydney, 1 team in Perth, 1 team in Melbourne, etc. Obviously, they've built it a little bit now, and we've now got 3 teams in Sydney. But it's changed a lot. And in 2004, with the introduction to the A-League, was massive. But then in 2006, I feel, was another turning point when Australia qualified for the World Cup in Germany.
Yeah.
And that was the first time in a generation, I think the first time since 1974, that Australia had qualified for the World Cup. So suddenly, the Vidukas and the Kuhls and even like Craig Moore type thing, these guys were suddenly household names in Australia. And the World Cup sort of then took it to the next level. And since then, we've managed to keep qualifying for the World Cup, which is lucky for me because I always seem to have a team in the World Cup. Here's hoping next year we'll have Scotland as well. But
yeah, fingers crossed. It'll be good to see, because I know Australia they're in a tough qualification group with Saudi and Japan as well. So a bit tight at the moment for them, but it'd be nice if both teams can get there in December. Give us something to look forward to before Christmas.
It would be brilliant.
And how does the standard of football in Australia compare, in your opinion, to that of the football over here in Scotland? BT show games now from Australia, so there is exposure to the UK market of the A-League football. But as someone that's obviously witnessed both Scottish football and Australian football, and as I touched on earlier, you do some coaching there, how do you feel the two kind of match up?
The style of football is quite similar on the whole in terms of it's a physical league. You have to be fit, and the sort of smaller, sort of leaner sort of players don't always succeed. Celtic had that really good young player. What's his name? Come back to me. And Azani. It was at Celtic, but never quite made it. He did get a bit of an injury, but he was a sort of smaller, sort of dribbling style player, and he probably didn't sort of make it at Celtic, and I think he's gone to Belgium now. But it's a physical league. I would say the A-League is probably around the sort of bottom half of the Scottish Premier League, maybe the sort of higher end of the Championship. So, from your, dare I say, sort of St Mirren, type St Johnstone, Inverness, Killie, those sort of teams. That's I think around the standard, in my opinion. Yeah. I think if Aberdeen were in the Australian A-League, I think we'd get all the way and go all the way to the grand final, to be honest.
Yeah, is that kind of a weird setup though, having a league? I suppose it's kind of similar like America. Even if you finish number 1 in the league, you've still got to get to a grand final to win the trophy.
It is. It's, I've kind of accepted that's just the way it is. But like the Western Sydney Wanderers in their inaugural season, they actually finished what they call as minor premiers, or they won the Premier Plate. They finished top of the league and they won the league by some way. And but they get a sort of literally a silver plate, and that's it. The actual winner of the season is the grand final winner, and it's usually the top 6 or even sometimes the top 8, I think, that play off. And Wanderers went through that season and got to the grand final and lost. So that sort of winning of the Premier's plate, I remember it, but it's not really noted in history. It's the winner of the grand final. So it's really unusual, and it follows all the way down into youth and kids football as well. That's the way they operate. It's a top 4 usually system, or a top 6. So most teams are just happy to get in there and then sort of push for the finals after that.
Yeah, it's kind of a format, as I said, is more maybe recognised in the MLS or rugby league over here, or the NRL in Australia, which was a sport that was great during the first lockdown, as it seemed to be the only sport that was getting shown. So when the wee man was getting up at the small hours of the morning, I wasn't too busy complaining, so I would just go downstairs and chuck on the NRL. So that was fun. But on Australian football, obviously you've compared the standards, but the passion off the pitch seems to be maybe on a different level from that here in Scotland. For those of you that are maybe watching on YouTube, once you've hit that subscribe button and finished this video, you can check out Copa 90, the Derby Day segment that they do. We spoke to Allan about that pre-recording, and they did a segment on the Sydney Derby, a game that I'm sure you've taken in many a time, Allan. Obviously that the recent fixture back in November ended in a 0-0 draw, but it came across as a very passionate match from both sets of fans. Is that just because it's a derby, or is there a lot of passion in the stands week in, week out in Australia?
There is a lot of passion. I think from the offset, every team essentially has established like a active support. It's sort of what they call. So the Wanderers have got the RBB, which is the red and black block. Sydney have got the Cove and so on. Every team's got an active support. So when you go on to buy a ticket, you can just buy a ticket for the active support area, and then it's expected that you're going to stand and you're going to sing for 90 minutes. And if you don't, they'll make sure that you don't come back there, And at the front, and it's all organised, at the front there's a little bit of scaffolding with a capo and a megaphone there, who basically, is the sort of conductor, saying what song they're going to sing and when they're going to sing it and when they're going to stop. So if virtually every club's got that. Also what I like is when you go to an away game. So say, we went up to Central Coast to watch Wanderers v Central Coast Mariners recently. And when you go online to buy your tickets, you can buy an away ticket, or you can buy an active away ticket, So it's a little bit like, I guess, we've got the Red Shed now at Pittodrie, and it's almost like, say we went to Easter Road, it would be like, if you buy a ticket in this bay, you're going to stand up and sing. If you don't want to stand up and sing, or you're bringing your family, you can sit in this bay. And the fact that alcohol was served in grounds in Australia sort of helps. It does mean you get a bit of a beer shower when there's a goal scored and that sort of stuff. But I think having that as a foundation helps. And then I think because a lot of football fans in Australia maybe come from Scotland or the UK, or they come from another European country, or they come from a country where sort of football is in their blood and it's a bit of a religion. So they don't really follow the rugby league or the AFL. And they say, well, we don't want to just go there and sort of clap and say well done and have one chant. We want it to be like a European style atmosphere. So they work really hard at it. And I think in general that there is a lot of passion on the sideline, and there's most definitely sort of singing for 90 minutes. Whether it's, you've got the likes of Central Coast, who might only average, a few thousand per game, but there'll still be a section of those fans singing for 90 minutes, which is brilliant.
The way, the tickets may be done in Australia is something that clubs over here should look at. I know certainly from away games, I'm involved in the supporters club myself, and supporters clubs tend to be sat together at away games.
Yeah.
But it would maybe be good. I remember like cup finals, it was if you want to be in this section, be in this certain blocks. That's kind of the expected area for it. Like you touched on there, standing and singing. But the likes of Easter Road, we never see anything like that. And it would potentially help create a better atmosphere. Again, Red Shed, we're seeing that this season, a good vocal home support, which has been a rarity in seasons gone by. But again, it's maybe something that for those that aren't joining in, they're not exactly told off for it like they would be over in Australia, but it's certainly something that's growing here. It'll be interesting to see how the Red Shed develops over the coming few seasons.
Saying the Red Shed has been brilliant, and even my son who commented, before, because he's been remembers the odd game at Pittodrie as well, and he commented and said, "Oh, that's great, Dad, because that's what they need," because he never knew whether it was coming from the upper Richard Donald or the South Stand or where it was coming from. So having the Red Shed's brilliant, and look, I'd say probably the next level is to try and get some sort of capo or something. I don't know if that's on the cards or that's possible, or it's too American, but it really does sort of help to have someone to sort of coordinate it. What also helps is most active supports like the RBB, they'll have their sort of own club appointed sort of security, so sort of liaison officers. So they try and not get the police to sort of go directly to them if there's trouble. They'll try and police themselves with their own sort of club, I don't know if they're volunteers or they're paid sort of security. So that's a pretty good idea as well. Look, it doesn't mean to say there's not trouble. And if you watch that Copa video, that there has been a lot of trouble with active support in the past, and the police came down pretty heavy-handed, and so did the authorities, and they sort of banned people for life for letting off flares and stuff like that. So that's something that I think has to sort of change. But I think there's some stuff that can be learned from what we do down here that can help build the atmosphere at Pittodrie, definitely. Yeah,
I think, from speaking to some of the folk involved in the Red Shed, they need a bit more help from the club, or the club need to be a bit more forthcoming and willing to listen to those fans' ideas, as kind of you've touched on, maybe the likes of the capo, or the main ones being to have the banners down the front, and it be fan banners, not these corporate banners that they've plastered over the seats instead. But, the club are going in the right direction. It's not perfect, but we're getting there slowly but surely. But on Australia itself, as I said, we're seeing that Aussie influence coming back into Scottish football with Ange Postecoglou taking over at Celtic, and Hearts' recent signings in Cammy Devlin and Nathaniel Atkinson coming in from the A-League. Is there any names out there that Aberdeen could be maybe looking at over in Australia? Is that market, Cammy Devlin came in and had a bit of an impact at Hearts. We've seen Tom Rogic over recent years, Martin Boyle, if you want to call him an Aussie. He's certainly...
He'd never been to Australia until the recent game down here. He was like, "Oh, this is Australia."
Yeah, it was like Richie when he was picked for Scotland, and the first time he ever went to Scotland was his first training camp with a team. But there are Aussie players. You touched on Mark Paducah. Aberdeen have had David Zadrilich as well. So there have been Aussies in Scottish football, but are there any up and coming Aussies that maybe Aberdeen could look at? Again, we mentioned that new signing from America that was looking to Europe as his best kind of way of developing. Do you think there's many Aussies that look at Europe in the same fashion?
Look, definitely. There is a lot of talent down here, and sort of what I just mentioned to you, maybe sort of pre-recording, we were talking about how actually in Australia we have a salary cap system. So the average sort of player down here probably gets paid about, I think it's about £1,200, or the equivalent of about £1,200 a week. We do have marquee players, and you can have Australian marquees and you can have international marquees. At the moment we've got, I think Daniel Sturridge is here at the moment, although he's probably not played at the top level for some time, but he's at Perth Glory. But in the past we've had some decent players, obviously, including sort of Dwight York, Robbie Fowler and stuff, and Alessandro Del Piero. But for the young Australians, when they sort of hit, we do have sort of, I think they call them scholarship contracts, where they don't get paid a lot of money. But then when they reach sort of 19 and 20 and they get signed as a full player as part of the sort of 26-man squad, they're getting about £1,000 a week. So they are looking to go to Asia or Europe or even the Middle East. Europe's most definitely the preference. And given the physicality of the Australian league, and probably Australians in general as being a fairly sort of physical, sort of fit sort of nation. Yeah. I'm Scottish, not Australian. Then I think it'd suit the physical game of Scotland. There's a young guy at Newcastle. I actually don't know if he's a Sudanese sort of migrant. His parents came here from Sudan, and we got a lot of sort of refugees that come through here from those African countries. And what's his name again? I think I wrote it down. Valentino Yule is his name. Plays for Newcastle. He's a big sort of forward type, sort of winger, and sort of a bit like in the mold of, dare I say, like sort of Eugene Daddy back in the day, but sort of leaner and much quicker. But I got a bit of flair and really direct. And I'm telling you, if Aberdeen came in tomorrow, they'd pick him up for peanuts and give him, some wages, and you got nothing to lose. This guy, Atkinson and Devlin, who's gone from Melbourne City to Hearts. I mean, I don't think Hearts would have paid a transfer fee. If very, very little. Most Scottish clubs, apart from Rangers and Celtic, are not paying transfer fees really at the moment. So, and their wages would not be great. So, what have you got to lose? Rather than signing a sort of 33-year-old journeyman from League Two or League One in England, sign someone who's 20, who's got a bit of potential from Australia. I think we've got Valentino that I mentioned. Western Sydney Wanderers have got a really good sort of central midfielder, Keanu Bacchus. Physical, athletic, little bit like in the sort of Kenny McLean type mould, a real sort of footballing centre midfielder, can play deep, can play 10, has got a shot on him. Sort of gets around I think he was in the Olympic team for Australia. There's been rumours of him getting a move to Europe, but it's never happened. And, why not? Why not Aberdeen? I mean, I don't know if we have any sort of scouting network that comes to Australia. But
the way we're going just now, we seem to be signing anybody that plays in midfield, so he might find himself with a plane ticket over to Aberdeen.
Yeah, I don't know. Are we going for the sort of 3-6-1 formation or something? I'm not sure.
No, but even, to touch on kind of what you said about, in terms of the kind of league comparison, we have seen players going over from Scotland to America, Australia even, like Eugene Daddy, he had a time over in Australia with Kenny Miller more recently, as similar with Graham Dorrans, although I know he's now back in Scotland. Yeah. So these players are going over and doing a job in Australia and then coming back. So there's no reason why Aberdeen shouldn't be looking abroad. And I totally agree with the point you make. There was question marks around this guy from America. He's just out of college. We don't know anything about him, but I'd rather sign somebody that we can develop and make into, good money, like we're doing Calvin Ramsey, Lewis Ferguson, than sign, to quote you, a journeyman that's, played the leagues down in England and may struggle when they come up to Scotlanders looking for one last payday. Get someone that's coming in to prove themselves.
Yeah, like, these guys, these journeymen, we have to pay good wages to get them. And sometimes we're paying a couple of 100,000 maybe in a transfer. And I just think, I don't want to get into names, but how many of them could you say have been successful? Very few. I think let's take a punt. This guy, as you said, coming from America, got nothing to lose. We haven't paid anything, I don't think, for him. He's probably not on, huge money. What have we got to lose? If it doesn't work out over a sort of 18-month spell, he goes back. But if it does work out, all of a sudden, you've got another Calvin or something like that who we're going to get a few years out of. Mm-hmm. Maybe win us a cup or get us into the group stages in Europe, and then we can sell on for a bit of money. So there's other players like on Calvin. I mean, if we get good money for Calvin and he goes, Western Sydney Wanderers have got two cracking young Australian right backs, Trent Russell and I'll think of the other guy's name in a second. And I think they're 19 and 20 years old. Mm-hmm. And they'd be a perfect replacement, for Calvin and at very sort of low risk, if you know what I mean. So I think, as I said, if Mr. Cormack's listening, I'm available to scout. My percentage is very, very small, I
suppose you've got first-hand experience doing coaching over in Sydney as well, so you can see the talent coming through.
Yeah, I've been coaching for the last sort of 10 years in Sydney, and I coach in the sort of New South Wales rep level. So my son actually plays at the same club, but in a different team, and it's competitive. It's as I said, it's very physical. Generally, the more physical players exceed. There is elements of obviously, skill as there is in every league, and there has to be because Australia also has a South American influence and a Spanish influence. So there is that very big on ball control and ball possession and that sort of type style. That's everywhere. But still, in general, it's a physical game in Australia, and I really think then that suits the players from the young Australians coming and being successful in Scotland. I probably wouldn't say the same as of Uruguay or Argentina. You'd think those 17-year-olds coming into the Scottish League probably maybe less successful, but definitely young Australians would have a real crack at it, I think, and would have a good chance of making it.
Yeah, no, it's good to hear that there is, talent pool there, and there's, potential to, you don't want to call them cheap talent, but talent that we could get that would fit into Aberdeen's budget, I suppose, is a politer way of putting it, and players that would come looking to not only develop, but with points to prove that they can compete at a higher or the highest level.
Yeah, I think affordable players, I think, is and low risk. Signing a journeyman on a 2-year contract on sort of £5,000 or £6,000 a week, if we are, it's high risk. You could sign 3 young Aussies, for that sort of money, and for relatively low risk, and my son's only 15, but he will be available in a couple of years' time. He comes with digs as well. Yeah.
No, the wee man's got his first football lesson on Saturday morning, so that's his journey to the Aberdeen Academy officially beginning, or so I'm saying. But you're obviously looking to come back, to Aberdeen for another trip, not necessarily moving back. You're hoping that to be the end of this year, is that right?
Yeah, I think, look, obviously, this thing called COVID has sort of put pay to any trip last year, and normally maybe around this time, actually, we would have been back 3 years ago at the moment. So probably we're penciled in a trip around September, October. My son's football season and sort of my football season finishes at the end of September. So looking to take off after that for the month of October. That's the plan. So visiting mum and dad and brother and sister down the Central Belt, and then getting up to some games at Pittodrie or whatever it may be at that time. That's the plan.
Yeah, no, that'll be good. Hopefully, everything pending, you can get back across and get another chance to see Aberdeen. But Allan, it's been a pleasure having you on Red Tinted Glasses today, hearing about your experiences with Aberdeen, but also over in Australia, and that it's a market that shouldn't necessarily be ignored by Aberdeen.
No, most definitely not. I think, it's great to see us casting the net into America. But I don't think there's no reason why we shouldn't be casting that net into Australia as well. And, I really do think that there's some real talent down here who most definitely could make it at Aberdeen.
Yeah, no, definitely. And enjoy your Wednesday morning cup of tea watching the game. We'll hope for a positive outcome.
Most definitely, yeah. Look, it's going to be tough. It's going to be interesting after the sort of bit of a layoff or the winter break / sort of COVID drop. But it's a tough first game back. But I guess we've got nothing to lose. And look, I'm a bit of an advocate for the change. I think we changed at the right time. Changing from Derek, I think, not before. I think now was the right time. We got a little bit stale. I think under Stephen Glass, we're certainly playing more attractive football. I find mostly. And it's sort of a little bit less predictable. But the score lines are a little bit up and down. The results are a little bit up and down, which is frustrating. But certainly we're a little bit easier on the eye in some of the football that we can play. And the possession-based football is very, very good. I just hope that we can keep most of the squad together and build on that for next year, and the club sort of maintain the investment. And then the second half of the season, I hope we can really go and push Hearts and take that third spot. I think there's no reason. I think we've got some good foundation. It might depend on the transfer window, but that's probably a discussion for another day.
I think it's a fair point. I kind of agree with what you've said there about the change, the style, and kind of building not only towards the end of this season and the kind of aspirations in terms of third place, but also building for the future. And I think it'll be interesting this window. Obviously, there's still some transfer speculation that me and Calum have touched on in that first half of the show today, but also kind of into the summer, if the likes of Ramsey and Ferguson don't leave in January, then where do we go in terms of replacements, and how do we build for the future in terms of Stephen Glass putting his own stamp on this team? And it'll be one to watch. That's for sure.
Yeah, most definitely one to watch. And I think he knows what he wants, and I think we just have to trust him. I think giving him sort of 1 year is not enough. We have to sort of believe that he's the right person for 2 years. I think he's got some amazing results. We've scored some great goals, playing some good football, and I think I was a little bit worried with the defence at the sort of earlier in the season. I always think that a good team's built upon two centre halves and a goalkeeper. There was two guys, McLeish, Miller and Leighton, and it was a goalkeeper. You might remember them. I still maintain that's the foundation of any good team, and we sort of don't have that even quite at the moment, but it's certainly better than what it was in August and September. Bates seems to have settled in a little bit more. Gallagher's been a little bit disappointing. I was hoping for more from him, because I think if he was better, then possibly McCrory might be some of the answer for midfield. I think he's been very good this season, but I think he could probably be even better in midfield. So definitely, give Glass a chance. Let's see what happens. But we will need some money in the bank, I think, before we can go and spend. But it'll be interesting to see what Fergie does and Calvin does anyway.
And I kind of echo that thoughts as well about the reinvestment. Hopefully any money from the sales is reinvested into the playing squad. And obviously we've got to look after the bank balance given the hit that we took during COVID, but it would be nice to see some of that money at least reinvested into the playing squad. But obviously there seems to be a kind of vision in terms of player development from certainly youth players, but you need to balance that off with a bit of experience as well, I feel. Yeah,
definitely. But I think having like the likes of Scott Brown and Ramirez, I think has done that. So, hopefully maybe we can continue that. He probably hopes Gallagher was going to do something similar. So that was the spine. Maybe he'll still come. Hopefully they can reinvest on a couple of key players, and then maybe top it up with some Aussie talent. And I'm happy to prepare a bit of a list and send it through to Stephen. I won't do it on VHS.
No.
I'm happy to sort of do a zip file and send it over. But it's available on VHS if he wants.
Hopefully he'll be tuning in as well as Dave Cormack to this episode just to hear your scouting report. But Allan, as I said, it's been an absolute pleasure catching up with you first and foremost, but also chatting to you about, as I said, that your look back down memory lane and also the life in Australia and the A-League as well. So thank you very much for joining me on Red Tinted Glasses.
Thank you, Glenn. Really appreciate it. And very happy to be here, and I'll be continuing to watch afar and cheering on the Reds down under.
Perfect. Take care. Well, thanks very much there to Allan for his contribution to the episode, and Calum, thanks very much to you as well. After a few weeks off, I think that went not too bad.
Yeah, I felt a little bit rusty to start with, but I feel like I warmed up towards the end of the episode, getting my match sharpness back there.
Yeah, well, we're certainly going to be match sharp come the end of January, as there's going to be loads of episodes coming thick and fast to you, either via audio or via video content on YouTube. So wherever you're tuning in to Red Tinted Glasses today, make sure you hit that subscribe button to get notified of any future episodes coming out, and follow us on Twitter at @RTG_podcast.